I'm gonna apologize in advance. Sorry. I'm gonna apologize in advance if I have a poor attitude. I woke up and just felt like absolute garbage this morning. Not sure why. Not really sick. I just feel like garbage. So, anyways, let's get into the quarterback evaluations. It's been super exciting getting into the draft season this year more than ever. I actually just celebrated my full 1 year anniversary, however you want to look at it, for this channel, which is cool. And one thing that's really cool about it is that it provides a way to enjoy football outside of the regular season of the NFL and college. One of the ways that we do that is through quarterback prospect evaluations. This is my first season ever doing all 22 film breakdown for quarterbacks, genuinely compiling together a list of the quarterbacks in a quarterback class of prospects and deciphering who I think is best and worst just on my own opinions. Now, I've watched, in the past other football creators and just other people in general giving their thoughts on the class and kind of deciphered what I thought through that. This year, I'm doing this a little bit earlier than I've seen some other people do, but regardless, I've made an effort not to watch other people's top 5, top 10 quarterbacks of the class, and just did it on my own accord without any other intel or information. This is just what I think of this quarterback class. So before we get started, I don't want to take up too much time in the intro because I know people like to click off when things aren't going how they think they will at the start of the video, according to the title. I do just want to explain a little bit of how I'm doing this. First of all, I'm going to show you a quick at a glance. These have some traits that are kind of lettered and graded in a way to just kind of quickly describe what I think about a specific player's main characteristics and traits as a quarterback. Arm, that's going to be power, release, package, and touch. So not necessarily accuracy and everything, just how hard and fast can they spin the football. How many different ways do they have to release the football? And do they understand touch? Do they have good touch? Can they throw it deep or over, with crossers or whatever with touch without just lasering it for no reason? And then we have athleticism. That's going to be speed and shiftiness, just in general athleticism, how athletic they are. I don't think I need to explain that too much. QB IQ, pre and post snap decisions. This is how much basically are they commanding their offense in accordance to what the defense is giving them, and are they making correct decisions or are they putting the ball in harm's way? Accuracy, I kind of segmented this a little bit into short, intermediate, and deep. You can look at short, more of just quick passes, and then intermediate, it's going to be over the middle, deep outs and stuff like that. How accurate are they in those situations? And then the deep ball, that's more of a timing and placement thing than anything else. On fades, posts, yada yada, sometimes power plays into effect with some of those balls. And then general playmaking. This is kind of the Mahomey Josh Allen trait. Just how much of that specialness do they provide and bring to make special plays happen? I know I said special probably too many times, but you know what I mean when I say general playmaking. These aren't obviously super expanded and thought well upon. I mean that they're thought out, but not like crazy expanded. But keep in mind, this is the at a glance section. So after we go over that for each quarterback, I'll then read my write-up that I have on them. I wrote a write-up for most of these top guys here. Then I'll just give an overview of my general thoughts in this specific draft and how they fit into this draft class, where I see them going, what teams I'd like them to go, do I think they're going to work out. That'll be non-scripted and everything. So without further ado, let's get into my number 5 quarterback prospect, which, sorry to throw a curveball immediately, I don't have one. Honestly, after a certain point, yeah, there's some difference between these guys overall, but I didn't, see a crazy amount of difference. I'd rather just talk a little bit more about the quarterbacks that could be slotted in that 5 in no particular order necessarily. I'll just give a quick overview of them. So for Kyle McCord, that's who I'll start with, which is kind of a crazy spot to start with, but we are starting from the lesser highly regarded quarterbacks all the way up to the first, so this seems like a pretty ideal place to start. Kyle McCord, according to his at a glance, has an arm of a C+, athleticism of a C+, quarterback IQ of a B-, accuracy of an A-, and a C in the general playmaking category. And here's what I said. McCord is more or less suited for a backup role in the league, if anything, but there's a reason I put him on this list. Syracuse offense requires a lot of passing. He averaged 40-plus attempts a game. While a lot of these passes weren't special and more screens to act as a version of the run game, McCord commanded the Syracuse offense well. He mainly took care of the football, ignoring his outing against Pitt, and delivered the ball with accuracy often. While I wasn't impressed with his arm strength, he had really consistent accuracy and top-notch ball placement. As an improviser and mover, it really won't be anything special at the next level. However, he isn't a stone in the pocket. Could work on timing, as a few opportunities he was late on his release, but he was mostly solid mechanics. He also had a year starting at Ohio State where he played well, showing he can keep up with top talent. I see McCord as a draftable quarterback suited for a backup role, similar to Spencer Rattler. So not only is that my eval on McCord, but I think it demonstrates a smaller version of what I'm going to do for quarterbacks 4 through 1, because this is a lot shorter than what I have for the other quarterbacks. But I was impressed with McCord's ball placement and accuracy most of the time. He fit some balls into some nice pockets. And if you haven't paid attention to Syracuse offense this season, which I guess a lot of people haven't unless you are a Syracuse fan, he threw the ball like 50 times a game. So it was one of those kinds of offense where you hear that and maybe you think, wow, that's really impressive, but a lot of it was shots to the flats or just outside quick, running backs just running wheel routes and him just dumping it off, a lot of screens, a lot of RPO stuff. So with that being said, that makes it a little bit less impressive, but at the same time, he did a good job of doing that. And I think he will translate to the NFL fine. When it comes to his athleticism, wasn't anything impressive there. I think he was more of an impressive athlete in college. Obviously, that makes sense, but understand what I'm saying when I say that, because like some guys aren't very good collegiate athletes and are not very good NFL athletes, but some guys are really good athletes in college and then it just doesn't translate to the NFL. You get what I'm saying. But that's Kyle McCord. Next up is Quinn Ewers. At a glance, arm is a B-, his athleticism is also a B-, his QBIQ is a B-, his accuracy is a B, and his general playmaking is a C+. Quinn has been playing good football for high-level programs for years, namely Texas. I did evals only for 2024 film, but one thing that sticks out to me about Quinn is his minimal growth over the years, which is a bummer. It's also semi-tough evaluating Quinn given the talent around him, which isn't something I would knock a quarterback for, but I didn't see him elevate his team very much. I found him to be quite robotic in his process, both pre and post-snap, and not necessarily a big-time playmaker. He has average QB mobility for the next level, and an average arm as well. I will grant him the variations of his releases, though. He is an accurate passer and generally commands his offense well. The conversation about Quinn seems a bit harsh, but it's important to realize that he isn't evaluated the exact same way as, let's say, Kyle McCord, because I'm trying to figure out if he's a first rounder, not a mid-round backup. Despite my questions of his robotic processing, he's a smart quarterback who takes care of the football. My issues with Quinn mainly lie on whether or not I see him elevating his teammates and the program he's in at the next level, and I'm unsure of that. I would be okay with a QB-needy team taking him somewhere in the second round, but not much further than that. So Quinn Ewers is someone that obviously a lot of people know, and for Quinn, as I mentioned in this write-up, I was really hoping for a lot more growth from the last couple seasons to this year. The thing about that, though, is he came out the gate pretty strong once he was starting at Texas. He was playing good football. With that being said, I would have hoped that by this year, his last year in college, he would look a lot different and a lot better, and I didn't really see that from him. I did, mark him a C+ for general playmaking and mention that a few times. There were some moments on film where he made some really nice plays, but it's hard to ignore the fact that this is Texas and the rest of their offense is, spectacular. A lot of the times it was the receivers that were really stepping up and making those plays for him. So I will be showing film while I'm talking through those quarterback write-ups, so hopefully you saw some of what I was saying there. And then really quickly, there's two quarterbacks that I want to mention. Like I said, these guys aren't all on the same level, McCord and Quinn, but I didn't end up getting to Will Howard and Jackson Dart, and I would see them as being higher than McCord. It's just, this is kind of the honorable mentions section where I don't really care who the 5 is. It's probably not McCord, but, you know, it might be Will, it might be Jackson Dart. I don't have a lot to say about them. Will Howard interested me the most, mainly because of his large frame, his NFL-style arm. He does have some athleticism, but to be clear with Will Howard when it comes to his athleticism, he doesn't have the big man Josh Allen type of athleticism where he's going to run you over and have 10 carries a game and truck stick everyone and jump over people. He's an athlete, but he's not a Josh Allen caliber athlete. He's got a really big frame, big arm, but I don't see him leaning into, or any team drafting him leaning into using that huge frame to run around with him all the time. Big guy, but more of a typical, less modern NFL big quarterback, I would say. But the league is still going to like him. I could totally see him being drafted. He did have a big arm, commanded the offense pretty solidly. His playmaking was fine. Jackson Dart, I have kind of the least to say about. Honestly, watching the film, you see how much Lane Kiffin's offense and scheme really sets up Ole Miss for success. And whenever they veered off of that in any way, not necessarily because it was on purpose or what they had to do, but because that's just what happened during the play. If it broke down and pressure got in or whatever, I didn't see Jackson Dart doing a whole lot that was special. It seemed more like Lane Kiffin's offense than it did Jackson Dart's offense. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Jackson Dart goes a lot later than, you know, like the second leading into the third round. So that concludes the sort of honorable mentions at the 5 spot for quarterbacks of this class. Now we're going to get into the top 4 guys, starting at 4 of who I really see as contenders for first and early second round picks. Starting at number 4, this guy's very polarizing, I think. His film was very polarizing. That's going to be Jalen Milroe from Alabama. The games I watched of him was Oklahoma, Georgia, Tennessee. By the way, I watched like 3 full games for every player, and then like I'd watch a little bit of some other games, not like the whole game throughout. That's why I didn't put them down, but just a little bit, just to see if like some of the things I was saying about them worked out in games where things were really weird or different. But in general, I watched 3 full games from each guy. And then also I watched the entire college football season, as many games as I could watch while it was happening, just because I'm a college football fan. At a glance for Jalen Milroe, he actually has an arm at an A because he's got a pretty powerful arm and he's got some releases. And I saw him throw with some touch, but more than anything, that A is for his throwing power. Athleticism, also an A, not quite an A+. I don't see him being like I see like Lamar Jackson as an A+. He's not quite Lamar Jackson, but an A is very solid for him. Quarterback IQ I have at a C+. Accuracy is in general a C, but his short is a C+. His intermediate is a C. His deep ball is a B-. That was probably the best ball he has in his bag. And his general playmaking is a B. And here is what I had to say about Jalen Milroe. Extremely polarizing film. I'd start by saying Milroe is more of a game-by-game player rather than a play-by-play. He looked like the complete package against Georgia and LSU, and like an undrafted player against Oklahoma and Michigan. The first notable trait of Milroe is his athleticism. He'll easily be the most athletic quarterback in this class, which will be valued high by a lot of teams. While his speed, running strength, and shiftiness are impressive and on par with a Jalen Hurts, I was disappointed with his downfield vision as a ball carrier. He left a lot of meat on the bones with poor cuts, essentially running into defenders. I do think that he mostly understands the option game well, when to pull and when to give. I also think his arm strength has been underrated in this class. He may have the most powerful arm in the class. He had a 30 to 40 yard zip to a receiver in a seam against Oklahoma that was very impressive and noteworthy, which showed that his ball stays hot deep. It also flies out really fast in quick game. This power is at times a disservice to himself, however. He tends to throw difficult to catch balls in the short game, lasering them into his receiver's hands for no good reason. In general, his short accuracy was quite spotty at times. Milroe's accuracy wasn't very good, but he did show on occasions that his ball placement isn't always bad. I'd honestly say his best ball is his deep ball. His throwing technique is also quite high-strung and less fluid than it needs to be to differentiate types of passes as well. His feet can be all over the place at times. Milroe was kind of all over the place when it came to pocket presence and coolness. He at times demonstrated poise against the blitz, dumping it off to his outlet or scrambling out for good yards, or absolute panic and mayhem. He does a good enough job of keeping his eyes upfield while scrambling. It's just spotty whether or not a pass will be a completion. While I've seen him make multiple reads in a play, on designed, predetermined reads, he shows an inability to change his mind, which has costed him a few turnovers this season. I also think he did a good job of hanging in the pocket when given the opportunity, rather than the clock in his mind going off and running. This may seem unfair, but I do want to point out that a lot of Alabama's miscues on offense weren't as much Jalen Milroe's fault as believed. The play calling was poor at times, whether it be the spacing on deep passing concepts, or the absolute determination to run QB draw after QB draw, or even a plethora of drop passes, especially by their tight end. Overall, it's tough deciding how I feel about Milroe as a whole. It also depends what Milroe will be drafted. Will it be Georgia Jalen Milroe, or will it be Oklahoma Jalen Milroe? Because those are two seemingly different players entirely. Regardless, the lack of consistency he shows in his film overall really concerns me. However, I believe he's a better player than given credit for overall. How he is valued as a prospect is completely team determined. I could see a QB needy team with an older coaching staff taking a gamble on him early and believing they could work with this issue to reach his upside. I could also see a distinct fear in receiving Oklahoma Milroe and not seeing it as worth it to take him anywhere earlier than the 4th round. It truly depends on the staff of the team that would draft him. So I think that, pretty much gave a good idea of how I feel about Milroe. I don't have much of an idea about Milroe because this isn't like every other player that's, high ceiling but really low floor, gonna need a lot of work, because a lot of guys that are typically like that, let's say Anthony Richardson, it was more of a play-by-play thing rather than a game-by-game thing. It was like he might throw an 80-yard bomb this play, and then the next play he'll throw an interception on a short stick route or something. I didn't really see that as much with Jalen Milroe. When he was on during a game, he looked really good. It was just those specific games where he looked like dog water. The other thing that makes this tough is it's not like he played really well against bad teams and then played poorly against good teams, which makes sense. A lot of times it was the exact opposite. He beat up on Georgia and looked like the Heisman frontrunner and like the best player in the country, and then lost to Vanderbilt in a very bad game. One of my ideas for Jalen Milroe, and this is kind of just like a pipe dream I came up with that I thought would be sweet, and it's too late for this, but I'm going to say it anyways because I think it would be fun, and I did it in Madden, and that was pretty fun. I was kind of envisioning that since Todd Monken was one of the coaching candidates, head coaching candidates around the league, obviously now he's committed to staying in Baltimore, but since he's one of the head coaching candidates, I was thinking, hey, what if he went to the Saints, and then the Saints drafted Jalen Milroe either in the 1st or 2nd round or whatever, backed him up behind Derek Carr, and slowly integrated the Lamar Jackson Baltimore style offense, allowing for a quarterback run game. I thought that would have been pretty sweet. Now the Saints have since committed with Kellen Moore as their head coach, who worked with Jalen Hurts. So I could see that playing into effect still. I could still see them at some point maybe drafting Milroe. That was one of the destinations I liked a good bit. In terms of player comp, I don't really have one. I mean, you could maybe say Anthony Richardson's somewhere near there. If you want a player comp, you're just going to end up finding any other really athletic quarterback that isn't very good. But like I did say in this write-up, I don't think we need to just completely write off Jalen Milroe because of poor film here and there. I think he has a really high ceiling. Like I said, his arm's very powerful. Along with it is the athleticism. And we did see full games where he looked complete. It's the bad games to me that are making it tough to decide what to do with Jalen Milroe. So that is how I feel about the Alabama man himself, Jalen Milroe. That is my number 4 quarterback. Let's move on to number 3. This might shock some people. I actually have Shedeur Sanders at number 3. At a glance, his arm, I separated these two because they were two completely distinct things, which kind of just shows a problem with this whole at a glance thing I have going, but this is my first time doing this, so we're just going to deal with it for right now. His arm in terms of strength was a C plus, and in terms of release package was an A minus. I might even change my mind on that, say it was an A, because he had a really advanced release package and could throw it from all sort of different angles and hobknockers and willywomps. But arm strength is going to be a C plus. His athleticism is a B minus. His QB IQ is a B minus as well. Accuracy is a B minus. General playmaking is a B minus. B minuses almost entirely across the board. I'm pretty sure if you averaged out a C plus and an A minus, it would also be a B minus. That wasn't just me being uncreative. That's just generally how I felt about each of these traits from Shedeur Sanders. The games I specifically watched all the way through were Kansas, Nebraska, and Texas Tech. And here is what I had to say about Shedeur Sanders. For someone with perfect timing, Shedeur Sanders' biggest issue as a quarterback is likely his problems with timing. A narrative around Colorado and Shedeur during their tenure is poor offensive line play in the pass game. I, however, do not agree with this. Shedeur has a really bad tendency to hang onto the football for far too long. Many times he would refuse to take what's given underneath, whether it's not seeing open guys or wanting to wait for a deep shot. I didn't see him demonstrate the ability to throw with anticipation most of the time, and usually he needed to see the receiver open before throwing it. This is a really big issue with him, especially considering his arm is not very powerful. Although Shedeur puts himself in tough situations with this very noticeable issue, it was good seeing how well he maneuvers around the pocket, avoiding defenders. He's quite shifty and elusive while trying to shake pressure. I was disappointed in his footwork and drop back steps, as he would often drop back a lot deeper than he needed and can never get his feet set, making him look relatively uncomfortable most of the time. While I would say he managed pressure well from blitzes and immediate pressure, his overall pocket presence wasn't a strong suit. He had the tendency to leave clean pockets and was seemingly always on the move, never seeming comfortable yet again. When it comes to Shedeur's accuracy, I don't have many complaints in this area. His throws to the line of scrimmage or general short passes looked phenomenal. He could accurately make passes over the middle of the field and had relatively good ball placement deep. His off-platform throws were a great plus in his body of work as well. His release package was also quite advanced and varied in a lot of situations. This does bring me back to something I mentioned earlier, which is Shedeur's arm strength. He does not have every throw available to him. He struggles on a fair share of deep posts, requiring velocity that he simply does not have. His mediocre arm strength, accompanied with his lack of anticipation in throwing, is something that scares me. Moving to athleticism, I thought he was an okay athlete. He did show a lot of really good twitch and shake in the pocket to get rushers off his trail, but his overall speed on design runs or scrambles was nothing special. There were a couple times where he got beat on an angle, and it really surprised me that he lost that rep. I don't think he will be a plus in the run game at the next level, and likely doesn't have the full bore speed to have a consistent amount of drawn up QB runs. Overall, Shedeur has top-tier improbability and good accuracy. However, arm strength and athleticism will hold his ceiling down a bit at the next level. He will also need to get comfortable throwing with anticipation and will need to take what is given more often rather than holding onto the ball as long as he did in college. There was a lot of meat left on the bones with how often he passed up on short but open targets, instead choosing to run around and take lower percentage shots or just getting sacked. I frankly felt like I was watching Brock Purdy while watching his film. It feels on par considering the arm strength, athleticism, accuracy, and improv. However, Brock Purdy understands anticipation and the power of short, quick throws. These two categories will be the determining factor in his NFL success, in my opinion. I'd be very upset if I was put in a position to take Shedeur Sanders with a top 5 pick and make him a franchise quarterback. However, I do believe Shedeur's body of work in college has granted him a first-round grade. So this is another player that I think has been pretty polarizing to talk about, more so just because his last name is Sanders, obviously son of Deion Sanders. Some people have him as QB1 and think he's easily a top 5 pick in this class, if not number 1. Some people say he shouldn't even be a first round pick. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle of those two things. Like I said, would be upset if I was put in the position to take him with a top 5 pick. But at the same time, I don't think he is just immediately kicked out of the first round and doesn't belong in this draft or whatever. There was a lot of good stuff on tape, and I spent a good bit of that talking about negative stuff with him. But understand, again, like what I was saying with Kyle McCord versus Quinn Ewers, is that, you know, if we're talking about Shedeur Sanders as maybe an early second or late first round pick, I think I'm more positive on it. But considering that the conversation around Shedeur is a top 5 quarterback, I wouldn't feel very comfortable doing that. Like I said, upside entirely just isn't really there for me. I like what he does when it comes to maneuvering around the pocket and being an athlete in that regard, but his athleticism otherwise isn't phenomenal. Arm strength wasn't that great. And I think some of the little things he doesn't understand or do very well as I'd like someone that is a top 5 pick to be. Some of the little things, like just the way he moved around the pocket. Like sometimes there would be a little bit of pressure coming in and he could have just moved over to the right, got his feet set back and try to make a pass. But instead, he would get that little bit of pressure and just run out, which I didn't particularly love. I also mentioned the lack of anticipation in his throwing. This really surprised me and maybe played into effect why he wasn't taking some of the easier given stuff, because, I mean, his vision over the field was really spotty at times. The only times he would throw with anticipation or kind of throw it up in any way, which isn't really the same thing, is when he was throwing the Travis Hunter, which I get. I do the same thing. But right now, I don't know how he fits into this draft and where he's going to go. I mean, the draft is always unpredictable, especially with these quarterbacks. I think the earliest he goes is to the Giants at 3, which actually isn't a destination I don't like. I think that Brian Dable would do a really good job with a Shedeur Sanders. My concern there is that he isn't going to give you what you want out of a top 3 pick still. So we'll see how that all goes. But for now, if I'm placing where I think Shedeur is and should go as a quarterback prospect, maybe somewhere like 15 to 20. I don't know. Not that he's the exact same style player, because I thought this player was really bad, but I could see him going in the same range of like Kenny Pickett as well. That's kind of where I would value him. But I think the conversation around him is kind of all over the place. Like I said, some people have him at 1, say he's the best in this class. Some people think he absolutely sucks just because they want to have fun opinions, but I don't agree with those things. Moving on to my number 2 quarterback, this is kind of what I was mentioning earlier when I was talking about surprises, a little bit with Shedeur Sanders, and then this next guy. Quarterback that I have at number 2 is Dillon Gabriel, quarterback out of Oregon. At a glance, his arm is actually a B+, which I thought was, people have been underrating out of him. Athleticism, also a B+. QB IQ, A-. The only reason it isn't higher is because Oregon's offense is, you're not asking an incredible amount out of him, but he still showed a lot of really good stuff in that category. Accuracy, an A-. General playmaking, a B+. I watched the first Ohio State game, the second Ohio State game where they got thrashed, the UCLA game, and the Penn State game. And here is everything I had to say about Dillon Gabriel. It's a little bit long. Gabriel's film is probably the most impressive I've watched this far. Gabriel plays in structure at a high level, consistently showing timing and rhythm in his pass sets. Accompanying his in structure ability, when the play breaks down, he has the calmness to hang out and adjust quickly and efficiently, ensuring a negative play is at minimum not a loss. Gabriel's pocket presence and coolness is a very notable trait, being able to sit in the pocket when allowed and let the defense pick their poison for how he will win, or move around at leisure while keeping his eyes upfield to hit an open man on the run. He sees and feels the rush, which grants him the ability to know how long he will need to stall to make his throws without panicking. He will often sit in comfort zones rather than just immediately running out of the pocket. This pocket presence was at times a lethal combo with his ability to throw with anticipation. He also brings a high level of pre-snap awareness, which naturally leads into his post-snap recognition. His accuracy in general is everything that you could ask for, hitting shots at all levels of the field with ease. Sniping into small windows is in his bag, along with off-platform throws. His mechanics are consistent and fluid as well. He has enough variation of releases, although this trait didn't necessarily stand out to me, which is something he should focus on. Given his size and likelihood, it will be easier to bat balls down. As an athlete, he moves around well behind the line of scrimmage, as well as adding yards in the run game. It will be tough knowing how comfortable teams in the NFL will be with using him as an addition to the run game with his smaller stature, but when looking only at speed, shiftiness, and general athleticism, he crosses every box for a modern NFL quarterback. With his size, I think his arm will be continually underrated, but I didn't see power being a big issue for him. He understands touch and can air it out deep on fades with great timing and ball placement, and can zip it over the middle or short into tight windows for completions. With that being said, he likely doesn't have every pass available to him, and although this trait will be underrated, he doesn't have an earth-shattering power behind him. Another notable trait of Gabriel is on plays where something immediately goes wrong, i.e. a bad snap, a broken trick play, early fumble, etc. He had the consistent ability to mend the issue and get the play back on track, which is another testament to his coolness and comfort at the quarterback position. It's my understanding that Gabriel isn't viewed as a first-round quarterback. I guess the reasoning behind this is his size and lack of a ceiling. It may also have to do with Oregon's offense, often running screens and line of scrimmage quick shots, and in general not giving Gabriel opportunity to show he can do everything, leaving some unknowns. With that being said, Gabriel, as of right now, is my second quarterback in this class, ahead of Shedeur Sanders. I'd be comfortable taking him within the top 10, knowing I'm getting an experienced, athletic, poised quarterback that consistently shows great timing and rhythm within the game, that is used to playing against high-level talent and winning. It is likely true that Gabriel isn't a do-it-all type of quarterback, but what he does at an extremely high level, and within the right system will continue performing at a high level in the NFL. So I had a lot of good things to say about Dillon Gabriel. I was a really big fan of his film, someone I've obviously kept up with throughout the entire season, knowing that he was playing good football and that Oregon was doing well, and also knowing that a lot of the reason their offense was so good is because of Dan Lanning and the play calling, some of the receivers they have there. As I was watching the film, though, I actually found that Dillon Gabriel was a large reason that they were winning games and performing well on offense. The receivers were dropping some footballs and fumbling, not making the best plays for him even when he would make a play, and the play calling was kind of, it was obviously good, but I think it held them back at times too. I do want like a clear, definitive answer. I feel like being a Dillon Gabriel supporter kind of feels like you have to constantly give reasoning as to why, but after really watching his film, watching 4 full games, and then watching a bunch of other plays from him, I feel like other people need to explain to me why he isn't a first-round quarterback. There was a point in this write-up where I kind of mentioned that he understands and feels the rush and sees the rush without actually looking directly at it, and that he keeps cool during that and understands when to, how long he can buy himself before he needs to let a pass go, which is something that really reminded me of Jayden Daniels from this rookie season in the NFL. The ability to see a defender that's coming at you while keeping your eyes upfield, know that all you have to do is wait for a specific amount of time, maybe it's like 1.5 seconds, for them to make a break or just get past a safety or a linebacker on an over route, whatever it is, knowing that defender's coming, knowing what you want to hit and what you need to hit, and instead of panicking or running, just knowing I need to take one step back to buy myself half a second, and then I might get hit, but I'm going to deliver this ball accurately, and it's going to be right on time, and that guy that thought he was about to get a sack is going to be really sad when he sees that we just got a 20-yard gain. That was on Gabriel's film a lot. That is a really impressive trait that I think is something I learned from the Jayden Daniels experience in his first year. That coolness, that poise that everyone's been talking about, that's a huge part of it, and that's a big-time playmaker ability, especially for a quarterback in the modern era. I also said in the beginning that Gabriel isn't a do-it-all quarterback, but we're not seeing like do-it-all quarterbacks have success all the time. Like there's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen that are like do-it-all guys, and that's kind of it. Everyone else has that's a really good quarterback, has something that they're consistent with and something that they're good at. They can do at a high level, and they just perform it at a high level, and whatever scheme or team that they're on will focus in on that and hone in on that. And I think if you're a team in the NFL that's in need of a quarterback and you focus on what Dillon Gabriel is good at, you're going to have a top 10 quarterback eventually. Like, obviously, we're really early for me to say he has top 10 quarterback in the NFL potential, but I think you get what I'm saying. Like, just acting like his ceiling is really low because of his size and his arm strength, which, as I mentioned, was very underrated. He had a really nice, his touch on deep balls was great. But if you can pay attention to the things that Gabriel does well, which are things that totally translate to the NFL, and hone in on that for your offense, and you're the kind of offense that does the stuff that he does, I think you're getting a really dangerous player at the next level. Guy would drop back, 3-step, 5-step drop back, whatever it is. He'd be sitting down in the pocket, feel a little pressure, slide over, no biggie, no press. Look to the left, guy's not open. Look to the right, his second or third read, guy's not open. And then he'd sling to the fourth guy. Like, Dillon Gabriel just checked a lot of boxes for me that I look for in quarterbacks, especially what I've learned over the last couple years in the NFL with these younger quarterbacks like CJ Stroud and Jaden Daniels. Some of the traits they have, I think Dillon Gabriel has. And I think it would be a really poor decision for NFL teams to not see that and deny that because of, I don't even know, because of the system that he's in, because of his size. He's not even like incredibly small. And like I said, he's a really good athlete, and he's bulky too. He's kind of, bowling ball-ish. I don't think he's been dealing with a crazy amount of injuries either. I'm a big fan of Dillon Gabriel. I think this guy can work out at the next level. Got the understanding of timing and rhythm and just being cool overall. So I feel like I'm kind of repeating myself at this point, but I just want it to be known. I'm a huge Dillon Gabriel supporter, which does lead to our next and final quarterback in this evaluation process. The number one guy who I think should be taken before anyone else. I think it's pretty obvious who it's going to be. Cam Ward. I was going to say his full government name, but I don't know his middle name, so that's kind of a waste of time. At a glance, I said arm is a B+, athleticism is a B. That sounds kind of low, but trust me, it's fine. QB IQ, B+, accuracy, B, general playmaking, A-. Those sound kind of low, but I think, this breakdown I'm about to give is going to describe it a little better and show why I think he is the number one prospect. Cam Ward checks most boxes across the board. He has sufficient arm strength, athleticism on par with a Justin Herbert, is a smart quarterback when the play breaks down, and mostly good in structure. I'd say some of his weaknesses in structure are a few things. Number one, I'd like to see him dirt screens and shorter design passes more often. He put the ball in harm's way a couple of times from this scenario, or took a loss instead of just living to see another day. Number two, he can at times get stuck on a read, which makes sense because Miami had a lot of RPO plays. Would still like to see him work to his other reads more often, which is something he has done and can do. Number three, his footwork in quick 3-step drops for RPOs and quick game is a little funky at times. I'd say overall his quick game is a plus, but his footwork got in the way at times. I was a bit underwhelmed with his deep ball accuracy. While he does understand touch, I felt there was a lot to be desired with his deep balls. He leaned into timing rather than placement and didn't do much special. The obvious plus to Cam Ward is his poise and playmaking ability in the pocket, showing no fear in the face of pressure and always keeping his cool. However, there are times in the pocket where he will run into trouble, especially by running into the center of the pocket rather than outside. I also noticed that on occasion while moving around the pocket, he will find a sweet spot to make a throw, but instead of setting his feet down, he will continue running and make the throw harder than it has to be. If you're drafting Cam Ward, you aren't drafting him on high-end potential of top-of-the-league arm or athleticism. You're drafting him because of his mind and coolness as a passer. You're drafting him because of his playmaking ability out of structure while maintaining a solid in-structure play style. While Cam Ward isn't necessarily elite at anything for a prospect, he's well-rounded and fits the mold of a modern NFL quarterback, especially in a game with a focus on short, move-the-sticks passing league. I'd be fine with taking Cam Ward as the first pick, but I wouldn't necessarily stack him up to other first-pick quarterbacks historically. So After hearing what I said about Dylan Gabriel and then hearing what I just said about Cameron Ward, it sounds like I like Dylan Gabriel more. No, I do think Cameron Ward should be the number 1 overall quarterback, and I think he will be, pretty obviously. The thing that differentiates between those two guys that I didn't really clarify through that process is, while I did say that I'm not worried about Dylan Gabriel in terms of his size and arm strength and the offense he was playing in, there is a difference between not being worried about it and it translating to the NFL and me be fine, with him going in the first round and being the number 2 quarterback, and then being the number 1 overall pick. And I think Cam Ward, all of the things I kind of mentioned with Dylan Gabriel in terms of size, athleticism, arm strength, he's up another level on those things. I also see him as a more moldable prospect than I do Dylan Gabriel. I think Dylan Gabriel will definitely grow and can grow a lot. I think Cam Ward could grow exponentially. This guy has a lot of really solid foundation to his game, but more than that, even though he's not the youngest, I still think he has a lot of room to grow in ways that Dylan Gabriel doesn't quite have the same room to grow. And I think you could really mold Cameron Ward. A good coaching staff and team could mold Cameron Ward into a very good quarterback in the NFL. I think the number 1 trait everyone knows of Cam Ward is how he'll just sit in the pocket and literally sometimes he'll just stand there not a care in the world. He does not care. He's not scared of pressure or anything. So that was really cool to see. His accuracy, great for the most part. Like I said, the deep balls could have been a little better, but that felt like a really easy fix to me. And then he had an even more dangerous level around maneuvering the pocket than like a Dylan Gabriel did, with breaking tackles, making guys miss, just making really big plays happen, general playmaking plays like that. That's why it's an A- for him. He's very solid in that category overall. I see a little bit of the Geno Smith in him, just with younger and more athleticism, I'd say. I don't think he had a rocket arm, but I think it's great. I think his arm is totally a modern NFL quarterback's arm at minimum, so that's going to work at the next level. I think he did the quick stuff well, the in-structure stuff well. Sometimes he did lean a little bit too much into trying to make a play rather than just going with the in-structure stuff. But I would say some of that was due to the fact that Miami, almost every game in college this season, it didn't matter who they played, started the game off losing and then had to make a comeback later, which I think I would put a lot of the comebacks on a Cam Ward and not as much as the being down on Cam Ward. That's what I think about that. I think at this point, I'm not sure who's going to be the number 1 overall pick and if it's going to be a quarterback. It seems like the Titans are more willing to give Will Levis a second chance. They could still trade that away. That seems to be on the table for them as well. Regardless, I think the number 1 quarterback is without a shadow of a doubt going to be Cam Ward. We can argue about where Dylan Gabriel is going to go. I could see him going in the 2nd or 3rd round because of how other people view him. This is just my list. I could see that happening. I would be absolutely floored if Shedeur Sanders or anyone else went ahead of Cam Ward. This guy, to me, with this class and these quarterbacks, looks like the obvious pick as the number 1 quarterback and kind of the most best upside, but also just best floor on him, and just the guy that looks the most like an NFL caliber quarterback without any questions. He has some questions and he has some things that he's not as good at that he needs to work on, but a lot of it are things that I think are going to be pretty easy to work through and for him to get better at. And he was also seemingly a very smart quarterback as well, and that's just going to go at the next level. It will, 100%. And I didn't have much to say about his accuracy. I think on short balls, perfectly fine accuracy. Intermediate of the field, made a lot of really good plays. Deep ball, like I said, I thought could have been a little bit better, but they were things I think he'll improve on. This, to me, any of the top 3 teams that are in the draft, I think, what were we doing? Titans, Browns, and then Giants. Any of those 3 teams, I'd be fine with them taking Cam Ward. Guy's a stud. Is he like a Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels category of player? No, I don't think so, but this isn't a year where you can get those guys. This is a year where he can either get Cam Ward or settle for something else, or take a gamble on a quarterback. And this is the least gamble you can do, is with Cam Ward. Anyways, that is going to wrap this up. This was my first time doing this. This kind of went... I hope I'm going to do the editing. We'll see how it goes and how it looks. I'll probably change it up next time I do these. I think there's something to be said about just reading through my write-ups. I like doing the write-ups a lot, and I wanted to get them out there. I'm interested to see what other people think about me reading them out while watching the film on them. Let me know. That's going to do it.